Good evening, and welcome to the DYST Now Pitt Panthers Preview Show, presented by the Arsenal Cider House in Pittsburgh. Tonight, our location is the Finleyville Arsenal Cider House. I guess you would call it the South Hills location. They also have the North Hills location in Wexford. You have to, if you've not been to the Arsenal Cider House since it opened back in June 2010, you need to get out to one of these locations. Absolutely some of the best fruit wines, hard apple ciders, and meads that you're going to find. Actually, especially around here, but in the city of Pittsburgh and the region for sure. They're not only the first, they're probably the best. We're excited to be here each and every week, starting this week. Our old home changed after the season ended last year, so this year we will be shooting live or taped like we are right now in the location in Finleyville. So if you get a chance, come on out. We're running from 6 to 7 each and every Thursday or Friday night, and we'll send out an update every week. My co-host is normally going to be Zach Kaminsky, but he is stuck in traffic, and we all know how that is, especially in and around the city of Pittsburgh on a Friday night. You've got high school football and everything else that goes wrong, and all the traffic that can get you caught up, and he's caught up in all of it. So we're going to wing it without him this week, and we're going to enjoy a glass of the Baby Waker Blackberry while we do this, and I'm going to do an entire segment on their product and all the different what they've got on tap. But tonight's feature is the Baby Waker Blackberry. Comes in two forms. You can get it by the glass, of course, or the growler, but they also can do it in sorbet. And if you really want to get yourself into some trouble, try the sorbet. It is unbelievable. Anyways, as we said, it's the Pitt Preview Show. We're obviously it's Penn State week. We're going to talk about the Penn State game. I'm excited about the Penn State game, believe it or not. I'm one of the few that probably is, because I'm one of the few that doesn't think it's going to be a blowout. But with all of that said, we need to go back to where we started, which was the Youngstown State game last week. Sitting in the press box, I got to watch it firsthand and take it all in. And for the first off, everybody wanted to talk about the crowd. The crowd was pretty good. I didn't have any issue with the crowd. Obviously, you would like to have seen more people, but that's just not ever going to be the case. It's not going to be the case. I shouldn't say ever, but it's not going to be the case, especially when they play Youngstown State. With that said, Youngstown State's a pretty good team. They proved it last year by being in their division championship. After the game, Coach Narduzzi characterized them as a really good MAC team, and I'll be honest, I can't disagree with him. They were big, they were fast, not like Alabama fast, but they were. They didn't play like your run-of-the-mill Division II team or FCS team or whatever the clarification is. But Pitt charged out to a 21-0 lead in that first half. They dictated. They ran when they wanted to run. They passed when they wanted to pass. They went for it on several fourth downs, or a couple of fourth downs, converted those. The defense was shaky in the first half, but they were able to dictate fairly well. They did miss a couple of assignments in the secondary. There were opportunities for Youngstown State, but they didn't take advantage of it in that first half. The offensive and defensive game plan for the week 2 is extremely bland. I can't even get into how bland it really was. The offense, very few end arounds. Not end arounds, but the sweep that Kadri Henderson, made really famous last year in the Pitt's offense last year. You saw a couple, and Quadri Olson, I think he played really well for the first game he started in almost a year. So the running game as a whole played pretty well. They ran for over 200 yards collectively as a group. Nobody tore it up like the first time Coach Narduzzi played, when Olson ran for over 200 by himself. Nobody ran wild, but as a group they did. Max Brown, transfer quarterback for Pitt, first start in over a year. Some would like to characterize it as undescriptive, but to be honest, I don't think it was all that bad. He just didn't show a lot, and I think that was it was the way they wanted it. If they wanted to show it, I think they would have. But the fact is, they ran a very bland offense. He threw very few passes. He connected on one that was long down the middle with his tight end. And he connected for one really important one at the end of the game in overtime, which we'll get into the second half, because that was a whole other kettle of fish. But he wasn't asked to do much, and he didn't do much. In the second half, Pitt stopped Youngstown State on their first set of downs. Pitt began to once again run down the field as they did in the first half, but they would get bogged down right as they passed the 50. They had gone for it on fourth down twice prior. I thought that was a moment they should have, and they didn't. They punted. They gave away some momentum, and from that point on, Youngstown State became the more authoritative in how they were running their offense. They controlled play with some controlled passes. Some wheel routes worked out real well for them. Pitt showed how it's either a bland defense that they were running, or they really just didn't get that wheel route. They blew it a couple of times. The quarterback threw a couple of touchdowns in the second half. It took them the entire half, but with about 5 minutes left, they would finally tie the game. Time and time again, though, when Pitt would get the ball back, they were running straight into the line. There was no creativity in that offense, none, and they would consistently give that momentum right back to Youngstown State. I'm not sure if that was by design, but that's really what it looked like. And it was I know from a fan's point of view, it had to have been a frustrating watch. I know watching from the press box, it was tough. You heard some moaning and groaning in the press box. I'm not going to lie, that was you heard it. But I don't think, as I said, I don't think it's because the Panthers were doing something or trying to do something they couldn't do. I just think they were intentionally not trying to open things up in preparation for this week. Being shorthanded, being short a couple of their normal starters because of suspensions, and one kid being thrown off the team. When you look at that whole scenario, they were really kind of in a pickle, and they didn't help themselves by running such a bland offense. And I keep calling it bland. You can call it vanilla. You can say they tanked a bit. They didn't. But they were largely ineffective running straight up the middle, as any team would be against a team that has any kind of any kind of defense. And as I said, Youngstown State, no, they're not Alabama by any stretch, but they're very good for their division. I do agree that they're a very talented MAC team. Well, that's really good. The Baby Waker's really good. So, but considering all of that, in retrospect, you saw Max Brown largely not show anything. He was targeted only a couple of times. They didn't throw it up and let him go after it enough. They did on the final drive of the game for Pitt. They threw it up in the end zone, and he went after it and got it. And it showed just how talented he is and how talented he could be this year. Max Brown put it in a place where he could catch the ball, and that's important. The running backs did what they needed to do in that game. The offensive line played well, though in the second half, Max Brown did get some pressure. And to be honest, he didn't react well to it. I think the offensive line got pushed around a bit, but I think that has a lot to do with the fact that when a team captures any momentum at all, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much at all for the ball to start rolling the wrong direction. And it just seemed like everything they tried to do, as conservatively as they did it, just didn't work. So this Panthers team is a team that has running backs, has an offensive line. They will get one of their kids back this week, Alex Buxer. Alex Buxer was out last week because of suspension. He will be back this week. They classified him as an or. More than likely, he may not start, but he will play most of the game. I'd imagine he started every game last season. I would expect the same for this season. Moving forward, Kadri Olison left the game briefly in the last game against Youngstown State. I should say left the game briefly, but seems to be fine. Should have no problem. Other than that, I mean, as a whole, they walked away from the game fairly unscathed as far as injuries go. There was one injury before, but the kid was already suspended, and it was a non-football injury, so neither, that particular situation doesn't show any bearing on this last week's game or this week's game. Back to the defense. I'm not sure if what we saw was them playing possum or if that's really what they have. But if that's really what they have, they're really going to have to button down this week. It is what we saw a lot of last year. The secondary being out of position and getting torched, and they did repeatedly get torched. The safeties were not able to control their own situations and be that coverage, that center field coverage for them. Cornerbacks were left high and dry often, and that can't happen this week. McSorley will torch him all day long, though he has a propensity to throw an interception, and he did last week. In his very first drive, he threw an interception against Akron, right in the end zone, to start the game. Akron couldn't do anything with it, and from that point on, it got ugly. This week, the Panthers secondary needs to really dial in and figure some things out and play like they did in the first half of that game last year. They are minus Jordan Whitehead. He's one of the kids who's been suspended. He will not be back till I think he's suspended for the first 3 games, so I do believe he'll be back for the 4th game of the season. There's not to mention they're missing Jordan Whitehead. They are starting a lot of young kids. Let's just say that. A lot of young kids. We're talking, Stalker and Garner are playing our safety, they're co-starters in that free safety position right now because of the Jordan Whitehead situation. And because of that, you're talking a sophomore and a freshman. Backing up Avante Maddox, you've got a freshman, Jason Pinnock, and sophomore Malik Hendrick at cornerback. On the other side of the field, at cornerback, you got Dane Jackson, who had himself a pretty good game, and Mathis, freshman. So sophomore and freshman. That secondary is riddled with freshman and sophomore. Dennis Briggs is a junior. A gentleman who also had a good game was Adowu. He played really. I think of all the guys in the secondary and linebacking positions, it was he and Dane Jackson who played the best. Adowu being in that star linebacker role. That defensive front got no push at all, none. I think they finished the game with 1 sack. This is a team that was amongst leaders in the nation in sacks last year. Got no sacks this year. So that just never happened. Just never materialized. And I blame that on a bland offense or a bland defensive situation and game plan. Look for that to change. Something else that was disappointing last week, but not surprising, with the freshman Alex Kessman as the place kicker. He was put in position to kick a couple of times. One time in that open end zone, and he struggled with it, pushed it, and he missed another one. Hit an upright one time, missed on the other side. Either one or the other of those two kicks would have made a world of difference in that game. Actually would have probably recaptured some of that momentum that they did not have. These are some things that absolutely have to change. And if you check the website, dystnow.com, and look for the posts throughout the week, you can follow Zach Weiss and I as we cover them. And Zach writes some really great columns, but I do most of the recaps, and then some in-game, take a good look at, as we take a good look at the upcoming game and review the old game. So follow us close there. You'll get some really, I think, some different insight than what you're going to see locally. I was one of the first that really started hammering away at the bland and vanilla offense, while others in the city chose to go the route of, the team didn't show much, they don't have much, and I really don't agree with that. I think this is a talented football team. I think it's a team that's going to get better throughout the season, and may not be at its best right off the get-go. Max Brown not playing much football up until now. Over the past year, that's, and you can practice all you want, but that's different. That's a different scenario altogether. So I think it's a team that gets better. They're going to have to get better quick, because this week's game, as we slide into this week's preview, you've got a Penn State team that absolutely was hammering every nail last week. They were on cue. Coach Franklin actually went as far as saying it was the most complete game they had played since he had been there. Says a lot. Says a lot for that team, and it says a lot for him. And I don't think it's all in that really a good way. It's great that you picked the opening game to really come together and play a good game. But you kind of want to see your team build up to it. There were games last year I thought Penn State played really well, and in that second half of the Pitt game last year they did also. It was an interception late. It was the difference in the game. It was an interception in the end zone late that was the difference in the game. That's it. So this year's Saquon Barkley is, he's a special talent. There is no doubt. He was fairly dismissive when it came to, after being interviewed last year, about the rivalry itself. He's a little even short, you could say. You could tell he was a little peeved. But as a player, he's as talented as any player in college football, and by all rights could probably leave college this year. He could have left last year, technically, with as talented as he is. He's going to be he's going to be a very difficult stop for Pitt this week, especially knowing they did not get great pressure last week. He's going to be difficult to control. I don't know if you control him. I think you just try to, don't let him go off on you. Give him his yards, but don't let him dictate the entire game. In order for Pitt to be competitive this week, and I think they can, they're going to control the football. They're going to control the line of scrimmage. That offensive line has to be the difference. They have to give Kadri Ollison as many opportunities to score or to as many holes as possible for him to get first downs, so the Panthers can maintain ball control. Their best defense tomorrow, without any doubt in the world, will be their offense. Without any doubt, it'll be their offense. If they're able to control the line of scrimmage and win the time of possession, they can stay in the game. It's a 21-point spread. Pitt's a 21-point dog. I don't believe that'll be the case. I think it depends on how it plays out, but I truly believe what could happen is this. It could be a situation where Pitt keeps it close through three quarters, and maybe Penn State may add a touchdown late, or a touchdown, maybe a couple late, and that could bump it across that 21-point line. I've gone on the record as saying 38-28 or something along those lines. Maybe it's conservative. Maybe it's 45-21. Maybe it's 45-24, something in that neighborhood. But I think Pitt can stay in the game. I think their offense is good enough to control the ball, stay in the game, and score with them, at least for a while. As I said, they held back a lot there, but in my mind, that offensive line needs to play well, and Max Brown's got to show everybody something. They got to unleash him. They got to let him throw the ball. They got to protect and let him throw the ball. They've got talented wide receivers. They need to show them off. And Kadri Henderson has to be a difference maker tomorrow. He has to be a difference maker. He's got to do something in special teams. It doesn't mean a run back for a touchdown, but it does mean flip the field a couple of times. Whether the Panthers score or not, he needs to flip the field a couple of times. They need to make sure Penn State has to go full field every time. They have the ability to strike quickly, and if the Panthers defenders miss tackles or aren't in the gaps, gap control is ultimately super important. If that does not happen, Barkley's going to run wild. McSorley's going to be left to, throw for as many yards as he wants to. So, a tough call this week. I don't think, as much as you pull for your team, as much as, I say your team. I've been I was a Pitt fan forever. I try to stay a little more neutral than I used to be, but I don't think this is a game Pitt wins. I don't think it's a game they get blown out though either. I think they keep it close. I think it'll be a really good game for a lot of the day. Actually, Ron Cook on the fan noon show said he thought 18 points seemed big. He said Pitt gave him no reason to think otherwise last week, that they could stay in the game, but he thought 18 points seemed like a lot. And to be honest, I have to agree with him. I don't know how much Pitt showed me last week, but I also know that when you play coy like that, we really don't know what you have. You really don't have any idea. So this week is wait and see. I mean, we're less than 24 hours away from finding out really what Pitt has on that offense, and if that defense can possibly play a good game this year. Because this is a huge game for the Panthers, yes, but they followed up with a home game against Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State's one of the best 10 teams in the country, so. This isn't going to be a simple 2-3. Then they travel to Georgia Tech after that. So their first 4 games are brutal. Probably the most difficult first 4 games they've played in some time. But then as the season goes on, they get more into the ACC schedule, and it gets a little easier. So as they get better, the competition drops off a little bit, so they have a chance to really do well, I think, later. To start the season, a lot of people wanted to talk about what's a logical next step for the Panthers. Would it be 30 games? Would it be 10 wins, 11 wins, 12 wins? Do they need to win the Coastal? I think they could win the Coastal. I do. But, they haven't won 10 games in over 20 years in a season. Not regular season, a bowl game. I mean, just regular season only. So I think that's a logical next step. And for them to win 10 games, they can drop a game against Penn State. They can drop a game against Oklahoma State, but that's it. They got to beat everybody else. In my opinion, they need to win either this week or next week. Have to. They got to take one of these next 2 games. Tomorrow in Happy Valley is a tall order, but I believe it can happen. I truly believe it can happen. Will it happen? Probably not. Probably not. To give you my straight out prediction for tomorrow, as I said, I'm going to still leave it at 38-28. Even though I'm probably going to pay for that. It might not even. It probably won't be that close, but let's stay positive. We'll say 38-28. I believe Kadri Olison actually has a good game. He runs well. Henderson also has a good game. And Max Brown shows off a little bit. I think you see a lot from all 3 or 4 of those guys. When I say 4, I mean Weah too. That defense that Penn State has is really good, but I think it can be had. I think it can be had, especially by this offense. Pitt's got a talented offense. They didn't show it, but they do. It all comes down to the defense. I'm not sure they can stop them. I'm not sure they can stop them twice or once. So, but if they can piece together a few stops and get a little momentum, there is definitely no telling where the game will end up and how close it could be. But if they let Penn State jump on them, it's could get ugly very quickly. And please, and I'll leave this segment with this. I don't feel like you can judge the head coach on whether he wins or loses this game. This is a tough game to win. This is a tough game to win. I mean, Pitt was talented last year, which is why they were able to beat Clemson. That and the fact I think Clemson didn't take him seriously. And when they finally did, it was too late. But I think Penn State feels like they're seeing blood in the water after that Youngstown State team, so they are going to come out hard. They're going to come out hard and wanting to really give it to the Panthers this week. I know that's what the crowd wants, and the whole social media. If you've been watching all week, it's brutal on both sides. On both sides, it's been a tough watch. Staying above the fray has not been easy. It has not been easy at all. So let's end the preview portion of this show right there. And when I come back, we're going to talk about our host tonight, the Arsenal Cider House in Findlayville, Pennsylvania. We're going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about some of the great options they have on tap down here. And then I'm going to give you a description of what I'm tasting here, because this is some of the best stuff this is some of the best cider I've ever had. I mean, I guess you wouldn't call it cider. I guess it would be a wine, but it's some of the best I've ever had. So definitely want to talk about it when I come back. So stay tuned. So I absolutely love to talk Pitt football. There's no doubt. But when you get an opportunity to go on site and do a remote like we get to do each and every week now, I'm down here at the Arsenal Cider House, as mentioned. My co-host is not here. He's stuck in traffic. He's in the North Hills. I apologize. Zach really wanted to be here tonight. We will be back and better than ever next week, so we can talk about the fallout or the good news or whatever about the Pitt-Penn State game. But this segment I want to devote completely and totally to the Arsenal Cider House. We're in Findlayville, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Peters Township, and inside of Trax Farms, which is a great local farm, and they provide so many great things here, between gifts and fresh food and veggies and fruit and all and everything. The Arsenal Cider House locally, or in this location, opened up not too long ago. They have what looks like 8 or 9 options on tap. Picket Bone Dry is an option. Pete's Pizzazz. Fighting Elk is the original. They got Archibald's, the Baby Waker Blackberry. I'm telling you, I'm going to keep calling it Baby Walker. It's Baby Waker Blackberry. Young's Plum. They've got an Alfred's Pear Sun, Grierson's Ginger, and an Orange Blossom Goldenrod Mead. Tonight, we are testing the Baby Waker Blackberry. I'm reading the board, so don't beat me up on this. First off, the facility down here is beautiful. There's wine barrels everywhere. The bar is great. We had just missed the rush. There was about 20 or 30 people at the bar, so it's perfect timing. As far as this, there's not a lot of commotion, but I will tell you, the Baby Waker Blackberry, it's sweet, but it has some dry tone to it. It's got no it's got no heavy sweet aftertaste. It's got a sweet pop in the beginning, and it's really tasty, and it's very tasty. You can buy it by the glass. You can buy it by the growler. You can sample whatever they have up there. They've also got this really cool sorbet machine. I've already had one. So they put the wine, the Baby Waker Blackberry in the sorbet machine, and they they push out this beautiful sorbet. And you get it in a cup, or, of course I got a sample of it, stood about that tall, and I can tell you, it's something that you absolutely are going to get in trouble drinking or eating or whatever. It's got a very sweet flavor because of the sorbet, and it accents the sugars. It tastes amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. It's got, 12? I think she said nearly 12% alcohol. So you really, you feel it. You feel it fast. The actual wine itself is really tasty. Some of the best I've ever had. And I'm not a big fruit wine guy. I love apple cider, and I love hard apple cider. And their Fighting Elk is unbelievable. It's my favorite, probably one of my favorites out there. The Grierson's ginger is also very good. I've had that before. They're all good, but those are a couple of my favorites. I'm going to try the Orange Blossom also. But each and every week we're going to talk about the selection, and this is the most recent. I will tell you, yes, it's 11.5% alcohol. And so it's a fruit wine, and they rotate it. So they're rotating new flavors in and out all the time. So if you get and I think the Fighting Elk's been around since inception. So that's the one that you're going to catch all the time. And I think there's a couple others that's been around for a long time. But the blackberry is an item that is going to come. It's going to come in and out, and this in the sorbet machine though. This is winner. It's unbelievable. As I said, super. It's got a real sweet intro, dry finish. It's not like juice. It's not like a grape juice. It's not like a blackberry juice or something. It's really good. You got to come out and try it. I'm not going to sit here and try to go wax poetic with you and tell you about the different notes and this and that. I can tell you, the Arsenal Cider House is one of my favorite places to go. It's because of this. It's a great product, made fresh, and they do what they love. They've been open since 2010. This location hasn't, but they've been open since 2010. Their other locations are in Lawrenceville, the original, and Wexford, their north location. And they were the first. They were the first cidery in western Pennsylvania. So not only are they the first, they're the best. Got to come out, give it a shot. For all of you to get the can, please tell them Jason from DYST Now or Sports Monitor told you to come out, because this is really good. I appreciate everybody dialing in tonight and listening. We'll be releasing the podcast shortly for everybody to download, and I appreciate all of you that have had an opportunity to catch me on Facebook Live. The audio is tough. I'm going to have to work on that because it's tough to run audio with the camera there and here. So but we'll work on that as we go. Until next week, we're hoping for a Panther win and some more great Arsenal wine. Thanks so much. Eat well, Pittsburgh, and hail to Pitt.